Mother says while visiting the Gig Harbor Public Library with her young child, they saw a man openly watching porn on a library computer. So she took to social media. She said she was outraged by the incident, saying that the man had no regard whatsoever for kids that were walking by at the time. And a lot of people commented, wondering how this could happen in a public space that's used by so many families. Pierce County Library officials say the man was well within his legal rights, but families are disturbed by this, and they say something needs to change. So Brandy is here, joined by a state lawmaker who says that she is considering a bill that would prevent this from happening altogether in the future. Hi.
Yeah, Bill, good morning. Good morning, everyone. State Representative Michelle Caldier, Republican from Port Orchard. We appreciate you being here this morning. This happens, these stories happen about once a year, where you've got an unsuspecting kid enjoying a public library, and then they see pornography on a computer, and we always do the story, and parents are always surprised. When you heard that this was actually legal to do in a public library and pornography was accessible, what did you think?
Well, first, I wasn't sure if it was true.
Yeah.
And so then I contacted the branch manager, and she said, yes, indeed, it is true. And this is a board policy that the Pierce County Library Board put together, and I researched it and learned that individuals 17 and older have completely unfiltered access. They can even look at child pornography, and they can't do anything about it.
Well, and in theory, child porn, it would be illegal. So if they did
Correct.
it even at a library, you know, they could still face charges for doing that. But you're talking about the actual access. The argument they make, and this is not just in your area, we've had stories about this up in here in Seattle as well. They say it's a First Amendment issue, that it's a public library, public computer. So who are they to tell someone what they can and cannot look at? What do you make of that argument?
It's taxpayer dollars. And so the question is this what the public wants for their taxpayer dollars? And one of the things that I learned from reading all the posts from social media is people do not want unfiltered access to pornography.
So you are contemplating what you're going to do about it as a state legislature, and you've been looking at some options. So what are you thinking?
Well, one of the things I'm looking into right now is researching the difference between internet filtering software to make sure that it is just for the pornography piece and not for other pieces. And then in addition, there's an additional cost to having the filtered software. So I'm looking at what that cost would be, and I currently have bipartisan support for that bill, and I will be putting that forward. It just depends on what it looks like as to what the software parameters are, as well as the cost.
The cost of it. One of the other things the library says is, look, we have designated areas where kids can be on computers, and we have designated areas where this is clearly kind of an adult zone, where they might know what they would pass by if they were to enter it. Does that not go far enough for you?
Oh, no, not at all. I think that even with teenagers, you know, to go into a library, it's not that it even is labeled as adult section. I mean, it's open for everyone. So small children can go by, as well as teenagers. And right now, kids who are 17 have unfiltered access to the internet.
Well, and look, even as an adult, as a 30-year-old, if I were to walk into a library, I'm not sure that I would expect to be seeing porn when I walk in. So for what it's worth, you're not just a state lawmaker, you're mother to 3 daughters. I just met your lovely niece.
Yes.
She's standing in the wings. How would you feel if one of your daughters or your niece were to walk into a library and see a grown person watching something like that?
Oh, that's the thing, is I would be incredibly upset. I understand why the parents who saw this on social media contacted me, because they were upset and said, you know, hey, when I send my children to the library, I assume that it's going to be a safe place.
Last question for you. It's hard to get anything done in Olympia these days. Really in politics in general, really challenging to find any sort of common ground. You mentioned bipartisan support. If the cost is reasonable, do you see any reason why lawmakers on both sides wouldn't support something like this? Because I will say, it's always a surprise when we hear this story. Parents are always like, what are you talking about? People can do that at a library. Would you think that this is something that your fellow lawmakers should be able to get done?
Absolutely. I think the biggest challenge is ensuring that the software is filtering out pornography and not other things, such as being able to research breast cancer, options, things like that. So I think that's, to me, I feel like that's the biggest concern that we have right now.
Well, and I guess I would then just ask you one more follow-up. Is it a slippery slope? If you say, you know, we're going to stop your access to pornography, what's stopping you from taking away their access to other things and more things when it is a public computer?
That is true. There is a slippery slope. However, when it comes to taxpayer dollars, I think that it can stop at the pornography.
All right, State Representative Michelle Caldier of Port Orchard, we appreciate your time this morning. And maybe there'll be a day where once a year we don't have a story about a kid walking into a library and seeing pornography. Because I can say in my career, we were saying yesterday, it happens like once or twice a year where we do this story with parents surprised by it. So this is something we'll be monitoring very closely. And if you're successful, we'd like to have you back on to talk about it.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, thanks for coming in.